What does to call the shots mean? And to bite the bullet? What's the difference between a wound and an injury? And is it a good thing to be in the firing line? You'll learn vocabulary and idioms connected to the army in this episode of
Aprender Inglés con Reza y Craig.
Hi, my name's Reza.
And I'm Craig.
And with nearly 50 years of teaching between us, we'll help you improve your English and take it to the next level. How are you, Craig?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm raring and ready to go.
It's strange, isn't it? Because we're still at the time of recording this, we're still in the midst, which is like the middle of the coronavirus pandemic, and people aren't doing anything. We're all at home, and you say, "Oh, what have you been up to? What have you been doing?" Nothing. You? Oh, nothing. And there's really not much to talk about because nobody's doing anything. So I think that's the way it is at the moment, unfortunately.
Well, most people haven't been doing anything, but there is one group of people who've been doing a lot, and that's the army.
That's true, and that's what we're speaking about today. But before we get to today's topic of the army, let's listen to a voice message we've received from our friend Andres from Colombia, who has two very good recommendations for TV series.
Hi Reza and hi Craig, this is Andres again from Colombia. I want to thank you first of all because you are doing this quarantine more bearable, so thanks so much. You are doing really like a social work plus this English class that you are doing. Also, I want to recommend you two series that I think that you're going to enjoy that. The first one is Vikings. It's an amazing series. And the next one is The Black Mirror that I think that is from England. I'm not sure, but I think so. And I want to also recommend another topic. Maybe you could talk about the rock bands from England. You have the greatest band in the history, like of course Beatles, Queen, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath. So I don't know if you like it, but I think so. So maybe it could be a good topic. Thanks so much for everything, and I hope that you are having a great time during this quarantine.
Thank you very much, Andres, for your message. It's really good to hear from you. And I'm really pleased that you feel that we're making this quarantine more bearable for you. You actually said doing this more bearable, but the collocation is making. So we're making it more bearable for you. And we're very happy that we're able to do that. Did you hear any other things that Andres could improve, Reza?
Andres, that was a very good audio message. And thanks for your recommendations. We'll talk about them in a minute. You talked about a series, but I think maybe in the singular you didn't pronounce the S. That's a typical mistake. A series, singular, has a final S. S-E-R-I-E-S is singular, a series. So remember to pronounce that final S in the singular.
And you make two very good recommendations. Two of my favourite series you mentioned. One is Vikings, and there are several Viking series. It seems to be very popular these days on these streaming services to be making series, TV series about Vikings. But the one you're referring to is on Netflix, and also I think it's available on Amazon Prime. Have you seen Vikings, the series?
I have. I've seen a lot of it. I must admit, I lost interest halfway through.
Really?
But I did enjoy it. I got a bit tired of all those battles. There was an awful lot of blood and gore.
That's the best part, Reza. That's the battles and the blood, and when they chop off the arms and the heads and they throw axes. That's the best part. The blood and the guts. The blood and the guts is what I enjoy the most.
So I am familiar with Vikings, and yeah, I enjoyed it. I did enjoy it. And I'm a big fan of Black Mirror.
Me too.
I love Black Mirror. Fantastic.
Actually written by one of my favorite people, Charlie Brooker, who originally he became famous as a comedian on the TV, you know, these TV kind of funny comedy quiz and game shows. That's how I first saw Charlie Brooker. And then after that, he started writing the Black Mirror episodes, and also one of my favorite TV series. I absolutely love Black Mirror.
Me too. We're totally in agreement with you there, Andres, both of us.
Now, your suggestion of a podcast about British music legends, we have actually already done. If you go to episode 175, so that's inglespodcast.com/175, you can hear Reza and I speaking about British music legends. And if you remember, Reza, we did suggest maybe doing an American version, so the American music legends. We could do that in the future.
Yes, we'd have a lot to talk about, wouldn't we, if we did American legends of rock and pop?
Definitely. So go listen to that, Andres, and we hope you enjoy it. And then we will add to our list of ideas the possibility of doing an episode on American music legends at some point in the future. Before we speak about our topic for this week, the Army, we'd like to mention the sponsor of this episode, italki. Now, what is italki.com? Well, if you're interested in finding a personal one-to-one private English teacher, this is the place that we recommend you go to. italki is a marketplace where teachers and students come together and help each other. So if you're thinking of a private teacher, and it's not necessarily as expensive as you might think, you can find a teacher on italki for a very good price and have regular lessons with that teacher. And that teacher will help you improve whatever parts of your English you feel you need help with. Perhaps it's grammar, perhaps it's vocabulary, speaking, maybe you're studying for an exam, or you need to do a job interview online, or anything connected to your English. Then there will be an italki teacher who can help you to achieve your objectives. italki are offering $10 credit voucher for people listening to this podcast. If you're interested in more information about an italki teacher, go to the show notes for this episode. That's inglespodcast.com/316, and you'll see an italki link and an image. Just click on the image or the link, and that will take you directly to the italki webpage where you can pay and sign up and get that $10 credit. And Reza and I would like to thank italki very much for sponsoring this podcast. Next, we have a voice message from Jordi from Huelva, who is studying for B1.
Hello, Craig. My name is Jordi. I'm from Huelva, and I'm studying to get the B1 level at language school here. I would like to learn more vocabulary, and these days I have been seeing many soldiers here around the street. Could you speak about the army, please? Thanks. Bye.
Thank you very much for your message, Jordi. Reza, wasn't that very nice? He's speaking for B1 level I thought was particularly good.
Yes.
I don't think he'll have any problems with the speaking test.
No, much better than the average B1 level. Well done, Jordi. Very, very good pronunciation, very good fluency.
In fact, I think all you really need to do is find out what you need to do in your particular exam at B1 level, your technique, and you will have no problems passing that. I think your speaking is very, very good. And we also like the suggestion of you speaking about the army. You say that in Huelva you have been seeing soldiers in the street. I have not seen any soldiers in Valencia, Reza, have you?
Not in Valencia, but I think they have been deployed to some parts of Spain to help with special arrangements for the coronavirus emergency.
And that's an interesting word, to deploy the army. Let's look at some vocabulary connected to the army. If you deploy the army, then you send them to a place in order to, be the army, in order to be soldiers, in order to be troops. Troops is another word you could use to describe soldiers. When soldiers come together in a group, you can call them troops, to send in the troops, TROOPS. And speaking of soldiers, there is an expression to soldier on, using the preposition on. If you soldier on, that means you continue under difficult circumstances. So you could use this as an idiom in different situations. For example, at the moment in Spain, we are under lockdown. That expression lockdown, cierre de emergencia. So we're under lockdown and it's difficult, but we're soldiering on. We're dealing with it. We're making the best of a bad situation. We're soldiering on.
Craig, one of the things about being in the army is that you'll be given a rank. What is a rank?
It's the order of how important you are in any organization, but particularly in the army. So when you first join the army, you're a soldier. And then with time and with recognition, you go up the ranks. And each rank has a particular name. So what kind of names could people hear when we talk about ranks?
Well, I'm going to be honest right from the start. I don't know if I speak for you as well, Craig, but I don't know half of the ranks in the army.
There are quite a few, yeah.
Yeah, and I reckon most people who aren't in the army also don't know all the names. Or maybe I've heard a few of the names, but I don't know exactly what they mean. I don't know exactly where they are in the ranking order. So I don't know all of them. I'm not an expert. Neither is Craig. But we'll mention a few. We'll mention the most important ones for you, for the army. Or it could also be for the Marines. The Marines are kind of like soldiers who travel to other places. Because Marine, you think of the sea, right? Marine is to do with the sea. So I checked this on the internet. I did a little bit of research because I wasn't exactly sure myself what it meant. And did you know, Craig, that the original meaning of Marine is naval infantryman?
Yeah, they combine the skills of the Navy and the Army.
So when we think of the word infantry, infanteria, that's to do with the army, right? So the Marines were created as a kind of idea of combining people from the army, but putting them on a ship so they could sail to other parts of the world. So that's why they're called Marines. So the ranks we're going to give you are for both Army and Marines. Okay? For the Navy and the Air Force, they have their own ranks. We'll talk about that some other day. So when you're an Army soldier or a Marine soldier, right at the bottom, when you join, they call you a private if you're in the Army, or a Marine if you're in the Marines. A private or a Marine. Or have you heard of a GI, Craig?
Yeah, I would guess that that's an abbreviation of, would it be General Infantryman or something like that? Is that
It
what
is.
means? That was just a guess.
It's a bit of an old-fashioned term, but for the Second World War, it was very relevant. They used to talk about G.I. Joe. Does that sound familiar?
Yep, definitely.
The GI was the general infantryman, the most basic one. So the private or the Marine. What have you got if you go up a little bit higher than that, Craig?
Well, then you go to a corporal, which is cowboy in Spanish. And from corporal, I think the next one on the list is sergeant. And the spelling's quite tricky. Sergeant, sergeant. So you've got private and then corporal and then sergeant. What comes next?
What comes next? What comes after sergeant? Well, I'm going to say two things. First, I'm going to say lieutenant, and then I'm going to say lieutenant, because I've heard both pronunciations. Have you, Craig?
Yeah, me too.
The spelling is only one, which is Lieutenant. The logical kind of pronunciation, the logical one is lieutenant. But some British people say lieutenant with a F sound in the middle. After
lieutenant, there's captain, and that's similar in Spanish, but obviously a different pronunciation, captain. And then major. Major's higher than a captain, and higher than a major is a colonel, which is also very similar in Spanish, but with slightly different pronunciations. So captain, major, and colonel.
You'd better spell colonel, I reckon, Craig.
Colonel, C-O-L-O-N-E-L. Only 2 syllables, colonel. After that, we're getting up to the higher ranks in the army. So a brigadier. I'm not sure if the American armed forces have brigadiers. To me, that sounds very British. But again, we're not experts. What do you think? Is there a brigadier in the American army?
I don't think there is. So I've been using here British ranks because American ranks are different. In fact, every single country has their own ranking system.
And up from brigadier, we have major general. Major general. So that's putting 2 ranks together, major and general.
And then after that, you have general. So I didn't actually know this for sure till I checked it to get ready for this podcast. A general is higher than a major general. Did you know that, Craig?
No, I didn't know that.
A general is higher than a major general. There are others we could say, but we're not going to mention, because there are too many. Those are the most basic ones.
And you can find these ranks listed in the show notes at inglespodcast.com/316. And of course, when we do speak about the Navy and the Air Force in future, we'll go back to look at different ranks in those various armed forces. But let's look at some other vocabulary connected to the army. Where do soldiers live? Well, often they live on a military base. And where do they sleep, Reza?
Well, within the base, there might be barracks. BARRACKS. The barracks are the buildings where they sleep, where they have their housing. So not where they use the guns for practice, not where they march about, but where they sleep is the barracks.
And one word which often makes me laugh a little bit is the place where soldiers eat, which is often called the mess. Yep, MESS, like a Leo. Like if you say to someone, oh, look at your room, it's a terrible mess, or what's this mess on the floor? So the mess in the army is the place where soldiers often eat, the mess hall, a comodor. And you have the officers' mess, which is often separate from the common soldiers, like the privates and the sergeants. And in the officers' mess, that would be the place where they'd go for a drink, a gin and tonic, some conversation, and to socialize. So the mess or the officers' mess.
The HQ is a very important place for the army. That's the H, head, Q, quarters, headquarters, where the top commands come from. So headquarters control all the other bases. And Craig, if I were to say to you MP, what could I be talking about?
We could be Member of Parliament, but because we're talking about the army, I would guess that it's military policeman or military policewoman.
And what do they do?
That's the internal police of the armed forces. So if you go out and get drunk in uniform, for example, and you cause a public disturbance, then you will have the MPs chasing after you. Or if you disappear and you don't report for duty, the MPs are the people to keep order and make sure that everything is functioning well, the military police. There are many words we can use to describe weapons. We could kind of group all of these words together because a weapon is something you use to fight with. And the pronunciation is weapon, although the spelling is WEAPON, weapons, armas. What kind of weapons are there, Reza?
Well, there are many types of weapons, or arms, you can also say. The most basic word is gun. So a gun can be anything that shoots. You put ammunition in the gun and you shoot. So it could be a small gun or it could be a huge gun which requires 50 people to move it. Guns have no specific limit of size. If it's a handgun, obviously you hold it in your hand. But you could call a big cannon also a gun.
And guns often have bullets, so you shoot bullets, bullet. That's the ammunition for a small gun, like a handgun. And there's an expression to bite the bullet, which is an idiom that's used when you make a decision to do something difficult. For example, you could say, oh, my English is very bad, and I've been trying to learn English for many years, and my speaking is not good, so I've decided to bite the bullet and pay for an italki teacher. So you bite the bullet, you decide to do something, and you go ahead and do it.
Other types of weapons which require bullets. So we've got handguns, or you can also say pistol, or we got rifles, R-I-F-L-E. A rifle, what you call a fusil in Spanish. So a rifle's good for taking a shot for a longer distance than a handgun.
And rifles are often quite accurate, but another long-barreled gun, the barrel is the tube of the gun that could be quite short if it's a pistol, but quite long if it's a rifle. You can also have a long barrel on a shotgun, S-H-O-T-G-U-N, escopeta. So a shotgun is more dispersed. The shot comes out of the shotgun in a wider angle. It's not just a bullet, it's called shot, S-H-O-T. And that's often used for hunting rabbits or other wild animals.
Some guns, as Craig said, have a long barrel. Some guns have two long barrels. So you can have a single barrel or a double barrel gun. Quite often shotguns are double barrel. To load is to put the bullet into the gun, and to reload is to do it again.
Some guns are automatic, which means you can shoot many bullets from the same magazine. A magazine is where the bullets are stored in an automatic gun. They're called machine guns sometimes, machine guns or automatic firearms.
But you don't put individual bullets in a machine gun usually. What do you put in them?
You put the bullets inside a magazine, which is a separate container for the bullets, and then the magazine goes into the machine gun. So a machine gun can be automatic, fully automatic, which means you pull the trigger, el gatillo, and when you pull the trigger, the gun fires all of the bullets automatically if you hold the trigger down. Or it could be semi-automatic, which means you pull the trigger once and fire a bullet. And you can keep doing that because it's taking bullets from the magazine.
Craig, what does the word mine mean when we're talking about battles and armies?
It's sometimes called a landmine, and they're very often underground. They're buried under the earth, and they explode when you step on them or when there's any weight on them. So they're explosives that are hidden very often. You can't see them, and they explode and kill you or do a lot of damage. So you can get anti-tank mines that are against tanks. You can get anti-personnel mines that are specifically for killing soldiers. And the spelling is M-I-N-E, the same as mio, mine.
And if you have a large area with lots of mines, what's that area called?
It's a minefield, a minefield.
Would you ever use the word minefield in a metaphorical way?
Yeah, you could do. For something that causes you a lot of problems and maybe you make mistakes easily. You could say, for example, when I study English, phrasal verbs are a minefield because it's really difficult and you don't know which phrasal verb means what. So it's a really complicated area. It's a minefield. It's a difficult situation.
Yeah, if you step in the wrong place, boom, you've made a mistake and it blows up.
Which is a phrasal verb, to blow up. Other things that can kill you, missiles, M-I-S-S-I-L-E, which is similar in Spanish. Miss, which you probably know, to miss someone, that's the pronunciation of miss. And then isle, the vowel sound is the same as in isle or while or why or try, missile, missile.
A grenade is a very useful thing for a soldier to have. G-R-E-N-A-D-E, grenade. It's a similar word in Spanish. You hold it in your hand, you pull out a pin, a piece of metal in there, and then you throw it, and then it will explode.
Is it Granada in Spanish? That's the same as the city.
It's Granada, yeah, same as the city. But Granada also means pomegranate.
Yeah, that's true. And that's the symbol of Granada, isn't it? The pomegranate.
Ah, well, it's bound to be that then, yeah.
It's not the hand grenade.
Be an unusual symbol for a city.
Artillery is the heavy arms that you fire at people. So it's similar in Spanish, artillería, artillery. And what do you fire? Well, not really bullets. They're called shells because they're more explosive. They're bigger than bullets. So you might know the word shell from concha in Spanish, but an artillery shell explodes when you get these really, really big guns. They fire artillery shells.
And you'll use your artillery and other weapons in a battle. Be careful with the spelling, Battle. So in one war, for example, the Second World War, there were many battles whenever the two sides fight each other.
Camouflage is clothes that soldiers wear when they don't want to be seen. Camouflage. It sounds French, Camouflage, camouflage. And it's also a verb. You can camouflage things to hide them. I went shopping a few weeks ago for some camouflage trousers, Reza.
Is it true?
Yeah, I couldn't find any though.
You couldn't find it. Oh, very good. What do you do with a gun or artillery in a battle? You have to fire it. You fire a gun or artillery. Or you could say shoot a gun, artillery. So the word cease fire is when you stop shooting. You stop firing. Cease, C-E-A-S-E, means stop. So cease fire is alto el fuego. No more shooting, no more firing.
That's a word you often hear in the news in trouble spots where there has been fighting and you hear, oh, there's been a ceasefire in such and such a country. Another word for fighting is combat. So combat is a verb and a noun. And you don't really hear war these days in the news. You often hear the word conflict instead of war because war sounds very strong, very, very dramatic. And if you hear there's been a conflict in this country, that probably means there's been a war.
And a common expression you'll hear, a sad expression, is that someone has died, a soldier has died on active service, or sometimes they say on active combat. That means they died while they were fighting in a battle. On active service or on active combat.
And another word that's often used instead of war, apart from conflict, I think probably to make it sound a bit softer and not as extreme, is hostilities. Hostilities. You can be hostile to someone. You can be very aggressive, very negative, and you can attack someone verbally if you're very hostile or physically. And if people are shooting at each other, you can say that they're having hostilities or there's been hostilities in this place.
A word which applies to everyday life as well as army, an important word is injured. Of course, the difference is in everyday life, you don't expect a soldier to injure you, but you can be injured in your kitchen if a knife cuts you or you burn yourself. But of course, there are many, many, many types of injury that a soldier can suffer. So the injured are los heridos.
And that word's very similar to another word, which is wound, W-O-U-N-D. It's a verb and a noun. The verb to wound is herir. And wound and to injure are very similar. Sometimes they're used interchangeably. But a wound is often used when there's something on the skin externally on the body, like a cut. So if you cut yourself with a knife, you would call it a wound. And often injuries are more internal. They can be external, but they're often internal as well, such as a bone fracture, for example. So if you break a bone, that is more likely to be called an injury than a wound. So we use wound when we're speaking about the army, more connected to weapons like bullets or a knife wound, for example.
And if you are injured, then you may be amongst the casualties of war. Casualties, las bajas, people who have been injured and can no longer fight.
Earlier, we spoke about the MPs in the military policemen. They will probably be looking for you if you've gone AWOL. AWOL. You hear that very often in movies about the army and war films. AWOL means absent without leave. It's an abbreviation. So to go AWOL means to disappear without permission. The soldier's gone AWOL. And you could also use that in an idiomatic sense at work, for example. If somebody doesn't come to work, say, oh, what's happened to John? He's gone AWOL. He's missing. We don't know where he is. He's disappeared. He's gone AWOL.
Yes, of course, because whenever you enlist in the army, that's ENLIST, you enlist, alistarse, you're not allowed to leave until they say so. You can't just go and at the weekend go home because you feel like it. You would be going AWOL. So when you enlist, you can't go until they say so. A couple of other words to do with the army, which are not necessarily about fighting. The expression to go on maneuvers. I better spell that word, maneuvers, a hard word to spell. MANOEUVRES. Looks like a French word, probably is. I think it just means movement in French. If the army go on maneuvers, that means they're practicing, they're moving around units, divisions to practice, they're getting ready for something. They're moving about just in case something happens, or maybe it's a practice exercise. And another thing the army do, which is not direct fighting, is another French word, reconnaissance, spelled RECONNAISSANCE. I suppose the French probably said reconnaissance or something like that, but we don't in English. We say reconnaissance. And it means getting information, but from moving about. So not spying, no. Reconnaissance is when you actually go to an area where the enemy is to find out what they're doing. So imagine you send a plane over enemy territory and the plane is looking at the ground to see what happens, maybe taking pictures and video, but not actually fighting. That's reconnaissance.
Well, we hope this vocabulary has been useful for you, and thank you very much, Jordi, for your suggestion to speak about the army, particularly if you are like me, you enjoy watching war films or reading fiction about the army. You'll find this vocabulary useful. Before we go, one or two idioms we've found that connect to this vocabulary of the army. To call the shots. To call the shots. What does that mean, Reza? Who calls the shots in your relationship? Is it Coco?
Coco calls the shots. Whatever Coco wants to do, when he wants to do it, that's what happens.
So he decides when you do exercise.
Exactly. He's like a general. A general calls the shots, right? The general tells people when to shoot their cannons, shoot the big guns. Yeah, you don't just decide because you feel like it. You got to wait for the order from the general. So he calls the shots. So metaphorically, the one who calls the shots tells you what you have to do.
Actually, in a relationship, women like men to think that they call the shots. Although really, we know, us men know, we know that usually in a relationship, it's the women who call the shots.
Yeah. But Craig, maybe that's the best way, because if there's one thing a soldier needs to be successful, it's a good general. So
that's true.
It's probably better that way.
And I think if men try to call the shots, they're fighting a losing battle. We had that expression before, to fight a losing battle. You know you're going to lose. Another expression with battle is it's half the battle, which means you've solved more than half the problem. Let's imagine you need to buy food because you open the fridge and there's no food, and you know you need to go to the supermarket, and it's, I have to go to the supermarket. Well, if you make a shopping list, that's half the battle, because then you just go and you buy what's on the list. So making the list is half the battle. It seems like a small thing, but really it's doing a lot to solve the problem. So that's another expression with battle. It's half the battle.
Craig, can you think of a military expression to describe this situation. Imagine your wife arrives. She says, I'm leaving you tomorrow. I've sold the house. I'm taking all the money and you will be on the street.
It sounds like she's just dropped a bombshell. If someone drops a bombshell, then they shock you by their actions or by their words. If I said to you, Reza, I've decided to go back and live in the UK. I'm leaving next week, so goodbye. I've dropped a bombshell. He didn't expect me to say that.
Yeah, like when a bomb falls beside you, you don't know it's going to land, but it lands and does a lot of damage. Another useful expression we have is to be in the firing line. So the firing line, also called the line of fire, but in this expression we say in the firing line, is the line, the space where people are shooting. So obviously if you want to survive in a battle, you don't want to be in the firing line. So if you are metaphorically in the firing line, you are in the dangerous area, you're in dangerous territory, you could be metaphorically shot. You could be hit doing what you're doing. So you're in a bad situation.
Let's say, for example, that Reza and I started to make very sexist, very politically incorrect or racist remarks on this podcast. We would put ourselves in the firing line. We would be very vulnerable to criticism.
A shot in the dark is a nice expression. Imagine you shoot a gun in the dark. Well, you can't see what you're shooting at. You can't see the target. So what's going to happen, Craig? What's the result of a shot in the dark?
Well, you're just taking a guess, aren't you? You're just guessing something without really knowing. For example, what does Reza have for lunch today? I'm going to take a shot in the dark and guess that you're having fish.
You're right.
You see, I took a shot in the dark and I was right.
He didn't know beforehand, but he guessed right. His shot in the dark was correct.
Another idiom is to stick to your guns. To stick to your guns. For example, when I was young, my parents wanted me to be an accountant. My cousin was an accountant. They sent me to work for him for 6 weeks during the summer, and they insisted that I do an accountancy course. But I didn't want to. I hated the idea of being an accountant, so I refused. We argued. I stuck to my guns and said no. So if you stick to your guns, then you're very assertive about something, and you stick and you stay with your decision to do something or not to do something.
Imagine a soldier who's being bombed or bombarded from above, and he has to defend a position with his guns. And with his bombs falling, it would be easy just to run away, right? But no, he sticks to his guns. He stays in that fighting position, even though he's under attack. Craig, when was the last time you did something over the top?
The last time I did something over the top, you mean get very drunk and dance on a table, for example?
Oh, when was that?
That was a couple of years ago, probably maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I went out for a few drinks and had too many and jumped on the table when a good song came on, and I started dancing on the table. That was completely over the top, demasiado.
OTT.
But what does that have to do with the army?
Over the top comes from the First World War. Whenever the soldiers came out over the top of the trenches to fight on open ground.
I didn't know that.
Yep. So it's not a very old expression. It's only about 100 years old. No older than that. People didn't say it before that. It's specifically from the First World War. In the First World War, to come out of the trenches was a crazy idea. The chance of being killed was huge. So it was a really, really, really risky thing to do. So to go over the top, you're taking a big risk. You're being very extreme.
So if you said, for example, oh, you have to meet my friend Susan, she's crazy, she's completely mad, she's OTT, then you know that that means she's over the top.
Yeah, she's going to do everything excessively, without restraint.
Well, thank you very much for listening. It's time for us to go and have our lunch, and it's time for you to practice your English. Now, recording your voice and practicing your speaking is half the battle. If you do that, you'll be going a long way to improving your English. So why not record us a message, say hi, tell us where you're from, and we'd really appreciate an idea or a topic for a future episode for us to speak about. So go to speakpipe, speakpipe.com/Ingles podcast and record your message of no longer than 90 seconds, please. Or you could send us an email. Reza, what are our email addresses?
Write to craig@inglespodcast.com or belfastreza@gmail.com.
And at store.mentioningles.net, you will find courses that will help you improve your English. We have audio courses, a first certificate course, and other courses to help you improve. So you're welcome to visit that website. Before we go, thanks to all of you who are helping us by supporting this podcast on Patreon. You can see a full list of everybody who's on our Patreon program over at Patreon, patreon.com/Ingles podcast. We'd like to say a special thank you to our new supporters who have joined us this month. Who are they, Reza?
We have Erix Medina, Rafael Vega, Eduardo Fernandez Sierra, Martin Forgeni, Amparo Soto, Alvaro Vasquez, and Beatriz Martin. Thank you very much to all of you.
Yeah, we really appreciate your support. If you'd like to join them for just $1 a month, you can join our Patreon program and get instant access to recent transcriptions. The website for that is patreon.com/Ingles podcast. On next week's episode, we're going to speak about the words manage, handle, deal with, and cope, and answer a listener question. Until then, thank you very much for listening this week. It's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
The music in this podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later.